designing using TinkerCAD, and eventually in the next week or so we are going to be switching over to SolidWorks, which is a little bit more elaborate. I'm going to be honest with you, it's a little bit more difficult to use as well, but that's the program that is used at the high school and typically in drafting and designing. For the most part, a lot of things that you can do on that program very basically can be done in TinkerCAD. So we're going to start with TinkerCAD, get you comfortable with moving and navigating the three-dimensional space before we transition into SolidWorks. So we have tinkercad.com. That link is in Schoology, so if you want to go there, it should bounce you to a page that looks like this. And then the first thing that we need to do is we need to log in. So if we go to log in, you're going to click on Student Accounts, and then you're going to sign in with Google. So if you already have your Chrome synced, that's what we did on the first day, you should be able to just click your school account here, and it should jump you in. Might ask you a couple more questions, but ultimately we need to land on this page here, the home section. For today's project, we are just simply going to hit Create a 3D design. Great. Before we actually start designing, I would like for you to just explore some navigation tools on TinkerCAD. So, for instance, if I scroll the roller on my mouse, the scroll wheel, it will zoom in and out. Okay? If I hold down my regular mouse button, I'm going to be able to select some things, click and highlight and select some things on the work plane. If I hold down the left or the right mouse button, the secondary mouse button, you can rotate this. Now what might be tricky is if you get to a point where it's really hard for you to navigate back, you can utilize this block over here. I can just say top. Okay? So as you point around, you'll notice that like zooming in and out, it's going to zoom to wherever your arrow is. Okay, let me get the work plane here. See, and it's getting a little tricky. So I can just simply click this box right here and kind of drag it to where I want it. Let's zoom out and we'll zoom back in. Okay. So our first project we're going to create is actually a fidget star. I'm going to walk you through this step by step. So since this is the first time we're doing 3D designing, what I would highly recommend that you do is if you get stuck or you miss a step or you can't quite keep up with the video, just pause the video and go rewatch it. I find sometimes that what happens are students get stuck on a step and they just let their video play and then they get too far behind. For today's project, we're actually going to be working in millimeters. So the first thing that we need to do before we start designing is we need to set up our work plane for millimeters. Down here, I can see that it's in inches, and it says snap grid, 1/8 inch. And what that means is every little square on here is a 1/8 inch square. So as we drag our pieces around, they're going to kind of fit nicely. They'll snap to those points. It just helps align things a lot easier. But we need to change out the millimeters. So I'm going to go to Settings. I'm going to change the units to millimeters. Okay? I'm going to hit Close Settings, and then I can see down here that our snap grid changed to 1 millimeter. Let's start building. We're under basic shapes here. There are different things that you can explore in here, but for today's activity, we're going to simply just do shapes. We're going to scroll down here, and I want you to grab this star here. Not the star that's flat, the raised star. And I just simply want you to drag that onto the work plane like so. Okay? Once we get this on the work plane, anytime we have something selected, we might have a few options that are going to pop up in this box over here. Okay, first of all, we are creating a solid, which means it's a three-dimensional shape that is, in this case, it's going to be printed plastic. We also have the option to change things to make holes. And holes are how we're going to cut things. That'll make more sense here very shortly. But the first thing that I would like for us to do is we're going to change this inner radius to 0.733, and we're going to change the points to 8, like that. So our star should look like this. Okay, so regular clicking is going to drag it around. I can also highlight here. Right clicking and holding down is going to be how we can navigate. We need to change the size of this star, and we do that. There's a couple ways we can do that. I'll show you I wouldn't say the hard way, but what we can do is we can click on these corners and you see these little numbers show up. And we need to change this star to be 100 millimeters. And then let me close this. I'm going to change this to 100 millimeters. Okay, but for this project, that's not the way that we would like to do it. In fact, we want to raise this up also proportionally. So let me take those steps backwards. So if you did those, just simply hit the undo button if we ever make a mistake. And check this out. This is a neat little feature. If I grab a corner and I kind of shake it, okay, and I hold down the shift key while I'm doing that, and I let go, it's going to select everything, and then it's going to simply make everything larger proportional. So let me do that again. I'm going to hold down the shift key on my keyboard. I'm going to do this, let go, and I'm going to change this to 100. Now, because I did that little shaking thing, what it does is it actually scales everything to the same size. So this is 100, this is now 100, and it also raised it up, which is important. Okay? In this case, it raised it up to 25 millimeters. So if I rotate this, and I see this middle one here. Now, not the arrow. We're going to talk about the arrow here shortly, but this is the actual height of our solid star. In fact, we need to raise that up. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to change this to 50. Zoom back out. And let me put this up here, like so. I'm going to zoom out with the rolly mouse. Okay. And let's put this so it's on the plane right there. All right. Now, what we need to do now with our little fidget star is we actually need to create a hole, and we need to make it a little bit smaller. This is going to be the tricky part of this project here. So make sure you're paying very close attention. I will actually rate these numbers up on the whiteboard up front, so if you forget what the numbers are, or you miss the step, then you can just simply look at the board. But I'm going to take this and I'm going to duplicate it. So I'm going to right click, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to duplicate it, and here's how we do that. I can click on the star here. This little icon here, it says duplicate and repeat, and there is a shortcut. Okay, you can do Control D, which will duplicate it, or you can just click on this button. Just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to click on the button. And now I actually have two of them. So what I need to do now is I'm going to shrink this to be 94. So the same step. This step is important. Make sure you're holding down the shift key. Drag it, shrink it, raise it, let go, and make this 94. And I know that it's proportional because this one automatically changed to 94. I'm going to turn this into a hole. I'll show you shortly what that actually does once we group and align these together. So aligning is going to be something that you're going to come across as being incredibly handy when you're doing a design, anything in TinkerCAD going forward. Okay, So let me take these. I'm going to highlight both of these by dragging. I'm going to duplicate it once. I'm going to duplicate it again. There's 3, 4. Hang on, let me get my scroll. There we go. And duplicate it again. 5. I have 5 of them here. So the top set is already done. I need to now change these numbers on these. So this one, if I point to it without clicking, it's 100. Hold down the shift key, raise it in and out, and I'm going to make this one 88. And remember, if I'm going too fast for you, please pause the video. I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to make this one 82. It's just slightly smaller than the one left of it. Okay, I'm going to click on this one. This one's going to be 76. And this one, 70. Keep zooming out. Oh, let me click up here and zoom out, and I can zoom back in down here. This one, 64. I'm hitting return or hitting enter on the keyboard between each one. This one's going to be 58. Love it. And 2 more to go. $52 here. And this one, 46. Okay. So now, let me zoom back out and zoom back in here. There we go. Now what we need to do is we need to align and group these. So the align and group tools are going to be found at the top up here. I need to first select 2 of them at a time. So I'm going to highlight this. Notice I don't have to highlight all the way around them. If I just kind of cross over them and partially select them, it'll select them. And I'm going to align them using the align button. You notice you can also push, you see it green there, it says L. If you push the L, it'll also give you these options here. So this is the align tool. Now everything is on the work plane, so this option here is going to be aligning them up and down vertically on the plane off of the work plane. This is going to align them center this way, center this way. And if I have them both selected, I'm going to now group them. When you group objects, what that actually does is it creates a hole and actually cuts them. So let me see if I can get underneath it to show you what I'm looking at. Look at that. Isn't that fancy? So that hole won't exist until you hit group. If I don't like it, I can ungroup it. Okay, now I have 2 separate shapes, and you can see it's a little bit shaded. These are 2 separate pieces, so it's not actually cutting that hole. We have that hole shape inside of the solid shape, but it doesn't actually cut until we hit group, like that. All right, this is going to make much more sense as to why we're doing this here shortly. Zoom this out. Let me rotate these, highlight both of these. Oh, not the top one. Try that again. There we go. Align, center, center, group. Let me roll my mouse out a little bit. Rolling the mouse is probably going to be the most frustrating part of this whole project. But that's okay. That's kind of the point of this activity today, is to just get comfortable navigating the 3-dimensional space. So I'm going to align all of them here, here, group. Let's see here. Let me highlight these ones down here at the bottom. Align. Oh, let me zoom out a little more. Align, align, group. Great. So this next step might be tricky and honestly kind of annoying, but before we do our next step, I would simply like to have you look at the bottoms of all these to make sure. You see how there's holes in all of them? Make sure that they actually did group. You can actually see the holes, and it's not shaded to show that they weren't grouped. Okay. Now, tricky part here. We're going to highlight all of them. And we're going to do the exact same step. We're going to line all of them to center. And now I'm going to group these ones. Let's see if this works. So now if I look underneath it, it should look like that. That's going to be the basis of your fidget star. We've already done most of the project here. So our next step is we actually need to kind of cut off the top of this. So I'm going to grab a basic shape here, a box. You notice here's a box that's solid and here's a box that's a hole. You can use, well, this is the one we're going to ultimately want to use, but let me just show you here. If I were to drag this onto the work plane, I can simply just turn this solid into a hole by clicking this button right here. And as I mentioned before, there are some other options that you can get by dropping these down, just like we did with the star. Okay, so what we need to do now, we just need to go over this whole thing. And it doesn't matter, I guess really specifically the dimensions, as long as you cover the whole thing like this. I just drew it. Doesn't matter if it overhangs, doesn't need to be centered. That's okay, as long as it covers the whole thing. What we're going to do now, remember I mentioned earlier, this is how we raise up this shape as far as stretching it, but this is how we actually lift it off the work plane. So when I drag this up, I want to drag this up 10. And I can drag it up there to 10 there, or I can just click over here and type 10, but either way works. And we need to cut the whole, everything above this. So you notice this top is peeking out. So we have to cover that also. Let's go up with the middle. Not here. That's going to raise it off the work plane more. Here, we stretch this box up. So now, everything that is inside that box, once we highlight everything and group it, is going to get cut. So I need to highlight everything, group it. Check that out. How fancy, Mr. Hale. There's our fidget star. The beginning of it anyway. The next step is going to be how we're going to finish this thing up. And it's actually going to be pretty easy to do, believe it or not. So this is 10 millimeters high. And so what we need to do is we're going to duplicate this. We're going to flip it over and we're going to slap it on the bottom of this. Here's how we do that. Let's first of all, let's raise this up 10 millimeters. Like that. Great. I'm going to take this. I'm going to once again hit our duplicate tool. Great. So now we have two of them. Something you may have noticed. You see these here? These are how we can rotate shapes. So in this case, it doesn't matter if we use this one or this one, but we're going to rotate this guy 180 degrees there. Okay, if you want to make sure you are 100% correct, 180 degrees or negative 180 degrees, doesn't really matter. It's the same thing. And now we have our shape upside down. And we can grab this arrow and we need to raise, or I should say lower, this back down. So we make sure that that says 0 down there. Love it. Let's align these. Align tool. Align this way. Whoops, I missed it. Let me try that again. Align tool. Align that guy. And it looks like it's already aligned this way. Otherwise, we would have a choice to select it. Okay. In fact, all of them are grayed out because in this case, since the shape is the same dimensions, since we aligned it to the center, it also is aligned at the top, it's aligned at the bottom, side to side, and there is our little fidget stars. So because we have these, let's call these triangle corners, indented inside each of these corners, we're not going to be able to actually take it apart. It's just going to print that way. Highlight it one more time. Whoops. And let's group this. So we have one final Fidget. Let's rename this thing. Here's what here is how I would like you to rename these. I would like for you to rename these first with your last name, and then I would like for you to look at the whiteboard up front, and I would like for you to pick a color of filament that is in the printer. So we have 6 printers in here, so you have 6 choices. Let's say I wanted this star to be gold. Okay, I'm going to make it say hail, space, gold. Perfect. What this does is not only does it save it in your TinkerCAD as hail gold. In fact, if you wanted to name it something else a little more specific, that's fine too. If you want to name it like hail-star gold. But I need your name so that way I can give you a grade, and then I also need to know what color you would like for it to be. How do I get this? Here's what we need to do. I need you to now export this as an STL file. STL is a 3-dimensional file. Click STL. Now, I'm on a Mac right now, so it's going to look a little bit different, but you'll get the idea. If I go up to here on Chrome, on my downloads, okay, or in fact, it might just be a little bit easier to just pull it from the downloads. That's where it's going. So it can either go here and find it in here, or it's going to be on your quick access. So let me show you what that means. In Schoology, I also have a link to this 3D print drop box. So anything that we do that we are actually going to be printing, you're going to use the same format for naming it. You're going to be your last name dash color. And this is where you're going to put it in order for me to then pull it onto my computer and send it to the printers. So this link is in Schoology. It's going to be the same folder for every single time that we do 3D printing. So you don't need to kind of go back and look for the different folders. It's going to be the same folder linked in all the projects. So 3D print Dropbox, I click New, and I'm going to hit File Upload. Now this is where it's going to look a little bit different on mine. So I have downloads here, and there it is right there. Okay, so it's hail-gold. You might need to click on the drop down here or say quick access, or you might have downloads on the left side here on your computer. If you need some help, check with your neighbor first and let me know after that if you still need help. But ultimately, once we click on this and hit open, or we double click on it, we can see that it is uploading the file. So it's an STL file here. I will then pull these, I'll give you a grade for it, and I'll also then send them to the printers and hopefully have them done for you tomorrow. So once you have your project loaded in here, there is no exit ticket. In Schoology, there's going to be an assignment. That's more of a placeholder in Schoology. You don't have to do anything with that. That's just for me to give you a grade in that folder. But if you upload this, that essentially is your final project and your exit ticket for today. Good luck and congratulations on completing your first TinkerCAD project.